My name is Keisha Williams and I'm 32 years old. 3 months ago, my own blood family tried to kill me. Not with guns or knives. They tried to let the lake do their dirty work for them. I can still taste that murky water filling my lungs, feel my lungs burning as I fought to reach the surface. My cousin Marcus had pushed me off that dock during our annual family reunion, and not a single person jumped in to help. They all just stood there watching, some even laughing like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. She can't swim. I heard my sister Tamara yell, but she didn't move either. Nobody did. My own mother crossed her arms and said something I'll never forget. Maybe this will teach her some humility. Humility? For what? For building a successful marketing firm from nothing? For refusing to keep funding their endless sob stories and get-rich-quick schemes? The water was so cold that August evening, colder than their hearts apparently. I should have drowned. The doctor said it was a miracle when that jogger found me unconscious on the shore 2 miles downstream. Hypothermia, water in my lungs, a concussion from hitting rocks. I spent 2 weeks in intensive care and not one of them visited. Not one phone call. They probably hoped I'd die quietly and leave them my life insurance money. But I didn't die. And now they're about to learn exactly what kind of mistake they made that night. Every single one of them is about to lose everything they've worked for, everything they care about. Because I'm not the same Keisha who fell into that lake 3 months ago. The woman who crawled out is someone they should have feared from the beginning. People always ask how a family can turn so cold, so I'll tell you exactly how it started. I was 8 when my father died in a car accident, leaving my mother Diane with 3 kids and mountains of debt. By 16, I was working 2 jobs to help keep the lights on while my older brother Jerome spent his days getting high and my sister Tamara focused on her next boyfriend. I put myself through community college, then state university, working nights at a diner where my hands would crack from washing dishes in scalding water. While they partied, I studied. While they complained about not having money, I built something from nothing. My marketing firm started in my studio apartment. I'd cold call businesses until my voice was hoarse, design logos on a secondhand computer that crashed twice a day. The first year I made $8,000. The second year $43,000. By year 5 I was pulling in $200,000 annually. That's when my family suddenly remembered I existed. Jerome showed up first, crying about his mortgage being in foreclosure. We're family, Kuish. You know I'd do the same for you. I gave him $15,000. 2 months later he needed another $10,000 for his wife's medical bills. Then came Tamara with her son's private school tuition. I just need $12,000 to get Jaden through this year. My mother needed a new car, her old one was embarrassing to drive to church. My cousin Marcus needed startup money for his landscaping business. For 8 years I was their personal ATM machine. Birthday parties I funded, vacations I paid for, rent money I provided. The total? Over $400,000. Money I'll never see again because giving it to family meant I was stupid enough to do it without contracts or payment plans. But the moment I said no, the moment I told them I needed to focus on expanding my business instead of funding their lifestyle, I became the enemy. The final straw came 6 months before the lake incident. Jerome's wife Stacy called me at 2 in the morning, drunk and desperate. Kush, baby, we bout to lose the house for real this time. The bank sent the final notice. I was exhausted from working 18-hour days trying to land $1 million contract with a healthcare system. My business was at a crossroads. I could either reinvest everything and potentially triple my revenue, or I could keep bleeding money to family members who saw me as their permanent safety net. Stacy, I can't keep doing this. I've given Jerome over $60,000 in the past 3 years alone. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she started screaming. So you just gonna let your nephew become homeless? You sitting in your fancy condo while your own blood sleeps in the streets. Jerome needs to get a real job instead of selling weed and calling it entrepreneurship. Oh, so now you think you better than us? Miss High and Mighty with her college degree looking down on the family that raised her. That's when I knew nothing I'd ever given would be enough. They didn't see me as family who'd helped them. They saw me as a resource that was malfunctioning. I was supposed to give endlessly and gratefully, never asking for anything in return, never having needs of my own. At the next family barbecue, my mother pulled me aside with that fake sweet voice she used when she wanted something. Baby, your brother really is going through it. Maybe you could just help him one more time. No, Mama. I can't keep enabling this. He's 43 years old. Her face transformed into something I'd never seen before. Pure hatred. After everything this family did for you. We clothed you, fed you, gave you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us. That's when I realized they'd rewritten history in their minds. The annual family reunion at Lake Whispering had been a tradition for 15 years. Every August, 3 generations of Williams' family would descend on the same rental house, the same private dock, the same arguments about who owed what and why life was so unfair to everyone except me. This year felt different from the moment I arrived. Conversations stopped when I walked into rooms. Cousins who used to hug me barely made eye contact. My own mother introduced me to her church friends as my daughter who thinks money is more important than family. I heard you won't even help your own brother keep his house, said Aunt Lorraine, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's not how your daddy raised you. My daddy raised me to work hard and not depend on others. I shot back, but the damage was done. I could feel the room turning against me. Marcus, always the instigator, started the real trouble after dinner. Y'all remember when Keisha used to beg us to let her sit at the grown folks' table? Now she too good to help the same people who looked out for her. Nobody looked out for me, I said, standing up from the porch swing. I worked for everything I have while y'all. While we what? Jerome interrupted, getting in my face. While we struggled. While we didn't have rich boyfriends to pay our way through college. I never had anyone pay my way through anything. But they weren't listening anymore. They'd created their own version of my story where I was the ungrateful daughter who'd forgotten her roots, and nothing I said would change that narrative. Tamara stood up with that smirk she'd perfected in high school. Come on, let's go down to the dock. Maybe the fresh air will help Keisha remember who she really is. I should have known then. The way they all moved together, the way Marcus positioned himself behind me, the way my mother stayed back at the house instead of joining us like she usually did. But family is supposed to be safe, right? The dock stretched 20 feet into the lake with deep water on both sides. I'd never learned to swim, a fact my family knew well since they'd teased me about it for decades. Every year they'd splash water at me or threaten to push me in, knowing I'd panic and scramble back to shore. But this time was different. This time they weren't laughing. You know what your problem is, Kuish? Marcus said, circling me like a predator. You forgot where you came from. You forgot who was there when you needed us. When did I ever need you? The words came out sharper than I intended. That's when I saw it, the look that passed between him and Jerome. A silent communication that made my blood run cold. Maybe it's time you remembered what it feels like to really need help, Jerome said. They moved fast. Marcus grabbed my arms from behind while Jerome pushed against my chest. I tried to fight, but I was outnumbered and they were stronger. My feet slipped on the wet boards and suddenly I was airborne, tumbling toward the black water. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs. The lake was deeper than I'd expected and I went down fast. Panic set in immediately, the kind of primal terror that makes you forget everything except the desperate need for air. I thrashed wildly, breaking the surface for just a second before going under again. Help me! I screamed during that brief moment above water. Please. But when I looked at the dock, they were all just standing there. Watching. Tamara had her phone out like she was recording. Jerome had his arms crossed. Marcus was actually smiling. Learn to swim, baby sis. Tamara called out, laughing. That's when I knew they meant for me to die. This wasn't a prank gone wrong or a lesson in humility. This was murder disguised as family drama. The water pulled me under again, and this time I couldn't find the surface. The next thing I remember is waking up in intensive care with tubes down my throat and machines beeping around me. A nurse named Patricia told me a jogger found me unconscious on the shore 2 miles downstream, blue and barely breathing. Honey, you were gone, she said, checking my IV. Your heart stopped twice in the ambulance. Doctor said you were underwater for at least 8 minutes based on the hypothermia and brain swelling. 8 minutes. Most people suffer permanent brain damage after 4 minutes without oxygen. But I was fine, better than fine actually. It was like dying and coming back had burned away all the parts of me that used to care about their approval, their love, their opinion of who I should be. The social worker came by on day 3. Your emergency contact never returned our calls. Do you have other family members we should notify? I stared at the ceiling for a long time before answering. No. I don't have any family. She looked confused. But your phone shows dozens of missed calls from people with the same last name. Block all of them. If anyone calls asking about me, tell them I died. During those 2 weeks in the hospital, I did die in a way. The old Keisha. The one who believed blood meant loyalty, who thought family came first no matter what. She drowned in that lake. The woman healing in that hospital bed was someone new entirely. I used my recovery time to plan. Every day, I made lists on the hospital notepad. Jerome's mortgage company, Tamara's credit report, Marcus's business loans, my mother's reverse mortgage application. Information I'd gathered over the years during their constant pleas for money. By the time I was discharged, I had a comprehensive file on every family member who'd stood on that dock and watched me drown. Financial records, debt obligations, business partnerships, employment details. Everything I needed to systematically dismantle their lives piece by piece. They thought they were killing the family A-team. Instead, they'd created their worst nightmare. I stayed off social media and avoided all our usual places for 3 months. As far as my family knew, I'd disappeared after the lake incident. Let them think I was too ashamed or traumatized to face them. Let them get comfortable with the idea that they'd successfully scared me away. During those months, I hired a private investigator named David Chin, a former FBI agent who specialized in financial crimes. I need complete background checks on these 7 people, I told him, sliding the list across his desk. Assets, debts, business relationships, legal troubles. Everything. This is quite a list. May I ask why? They tried to kill me. Now I'm returning the favor, but I'm going to be much more thorough about it. David didn't even blink. How thorough are we talking? I want them to lose everything they care about, one piece at a time, until they're exactly where they tried to put me. Desperate, alone, and drowning. The information David uncovered was even better than I'd hoped. Jerome hadn't just been struggling with his mortgage. He'd been running a credit card scam using stolen identities. Tamara's boyfriend Marcus was laundering money through his landscaping business for a local drug dealer. My mother had been hiding assets during her divorce proceedings, lying to the court about her financial situation. They were all criminals, which meant I wasn't just getting revenge, I was serving justice. I started with the anonymous tips. A call to the IRS about Jerome's unreported income. A message to the DA about Marcus's cash transactions. A letter to the family court about my mother's hidden assets. Within 3 weeks, their perfect little world started cracking. But that was just the warm-up. The real fun was about to begin. My first public appearance was at Jerome's workplace, the auto shop where he'd been claiming disability while working under the table for cash. I walked in wearing a tailored business suit and expensive heels, looking every inch the successful woman they tried to murder. Keisha. His wrench clattered to the floor. What? How? I thought you were dead? Sorry to disappoint you, brother. Jerome's face went through about 6 different emotions in 10 seconds. Shock, fear, guilt, anger, then back to fear. Keisha, about what happened at the lake. You mean when you helped Marcus push me into water you knew I couldn't swim in? When you stood there watching me drown? The shop went dead quiet. His co-workers had stopped what they were doing to listen, and I could see Jerome calculating how much this conversation was about to cost him. It wasn't like that, he stammered. We were just messing around. We didn't know. You didn't know what? That 8 minutes underwater would kill me? That hypothermia would put me in a coma? Or did you not know that attempted murder is a felony? That's when his boss, Mr. Rodriguez, came over. Jerome, you want to explain what your sister is talking about? I turned to Mr. Rodriguez with my most professional smile. I'm not his sister anymore. But I am someone who's very interested in why you're paying a man claiming disability insurance to do full-time auto repair work. Jerome's face went white. Mr. Rodriguez, I can explain. No need, I said, pulling out a manila folder. I've already explained everything to the insurance fraud division. They should be here within the hour. And they were. I sat in my car across the street and watched Jerome get handcuffed while his co-workers shook their heads in disgust. Disability fraud was a federal offense. He was looking at 5 years minimum, plus having to pay back 3 years of fraudulent claims. But the beautiful part wasn't just the criminal charges. It was what happened after. Stacy called me that night, hysterical. Keisha, please, I know you're mad at Jerome, but he's got kids. He should have thought about his kids before he tried to murder their aunt. It wasn't murder. Y'all were just playing around. Playing around? I was in intensive care for 2 weeks, Stacy. My heart stopped twice. But sure, let's call it playing around. He was crying now. The lawyer says he needs $20,000 for bail. I know you and Jerome got issues, but please. I wouldn't give you 20 cents to save his life. In fact, I'm just getting started. I hung up and made a note in my file. Jerome's wife still doesn't understand the severity of what they did. She still thinks this is about money instead of attempted murder. Time to educate the whole family. Tamara was harder to reach. After Jerome's arrest made local news, auto shop worker arrested for disability fraud. She'd blocked my number and avoided all our usual places. But I knew her weakness, that son of hers, Jaden. The private school I'd been paying for? They were very interested to learn that the tuition had been funded through what they now knew was a criminal enterprise. Private schools don't like being associated with fraud, money laundering, or attempted murder. I scheduled a meeting with the headmaster, Dr. Matthews, a distinguished black woman who'd built the academy from nothing over 30 years ago. Her story reminded me of my own, actually. Ms. Williams, thank you for coming in. I understand you have concerns about one of our students. I do. Jaden Matthews is my nephew and I've been funding his education here for the past 3 years. Unfortunately, I recently discovered that his mother Tamara has been using those tuition payments to hide income from the IRS. Dr. Matthews frowned. That's a serious allegation. It's also a documented fact. I handed her copies of the tax documents David had uncovered. Tamara claimed poverty on her tax returns while receiving over $36,000 annually from me for Jaden's expenses. She also failed to report income from her boyfriend's business, a landscaping company currently under federal investigation for money laundering. I see. Dr. Matthews reviewed the papers carefully. And you're bringing this to my attention because? Because Jaden is a good kid who doesn't deserve to suffer for his mother's crimes. But I also can't continue funding his education through what's essentially a criminal conspiracy. I wanted to give you advance notice before the IRS freezes all of Tamara's assets. That was all true. But what I didn't mention was that I'd already set up a legitimate scholarship fund for Jaden through my business, one that would keep him in school regardless of what happened to his mother. I wasn't cruel enough to punish a child for his family's crimes. But Tamara didn't know that. Her call came at 6 in the morning, 2 days after my meeting with Dr. Matthews. You vindictive bitch. How could you drag my child into this? Good morning, sister. How's your morning going? Keisha, what have you done to this family? My mother's voice cracked through the phone, but I heard no remorse, only anger that her carefully constructed world was falling apart. I survived, Mama. Despite your best efforts to let me die. It was an accident. An accident? You told the police I was a strong swimmer who must have hit her head on something underwater. You filed a false report, Mama. That's called obstruction of justice. The silence stretched long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then, your daddy would be so ashamed of what you've become. That's when something inside me snapped completely. Hi, Daddy. The man who worked 3 jobs to keep this family fed? The man who taught me that hard work and integrity mattered? You think he would be ashamed of me? You're tearing this family apart over money. I'm tearing this family apart? I'm tearing it apart. I was screaming now, months of rage pouring out. You watched your own daughter almost drown and called it a lesson in humility. You stood on that dock while I begged for help and crossed your arms like you were watching a damn movie. Lower your voice. No. I will not lower my voice. For 32 years I've lowered my voice, compromised, given until it hurt and tried to make you proud. And what did it get me? My own family tried to kill me because I finally said no to funding their failures. I was crying now, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. You want to know what Daddy would be ashamed of? He'd be ashamed that his wife chose money over her child's life. He'd be ashamed that his other children are criminals and fraudsters. He'd be ashamed that his family became exactly the kind of people he worked so hard to rise above. Keisha. I'm not finished. You filed a false police report claiming I was an experienced swimmer. You lied to investigators about what happened that night. And now you're about to learn what happens when you lie to federal agents. Because that was my trump card. The FBI investigation into Marcus's money laundering had led them straight to my mother, who'd been helping hide cash assets in her reverse mortgage application. 3 felonies: mortgage fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice in my attempted murder case. The house she tried so hard to keep? The government was about to seize it. Marcus lasted the longest, probably because he was the smartest of the bunch. When the DA raided his landscaping business and found $200,000 in cash hidden in fertilizer bags, he immediately hired a lawyer and tried to negotiate. His lawyer called me on a Tuesday morning. "Ms. Williams, my client would like to arrange a meeting to discuss resolving this situation amicably." "Tell your client I said go to hell." "Ms. Williams, I think you misunderstand the severity of—" "No, counselor, I think you misunderstand. Your client participated in the attempted murder of a federal witness." That wasn't technically true yet, but once the IRS finished their investigation into Jerome's fraud ring, it would be. He's looking at RICO charges, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. That's quite an exaggeration. Is it? Let me paint you a picture. Your client, along with 2 co-conspirators, lured me to an isolated location under false pretenses. They then physically assaulted me and threw me into a body of water they knew I couldn't swim in, with the intent of causing my death. When I surfaced and screamed for help, they refused assistance and actively prevented rescue by other family members present. I let that sink in. 8 minutes underwater, counselor. Heart stopped twice. 2 weeks in intensive care. That's not family drama, that's attempted first-degree murder. Ms. Williams. But wait, there's more. After the attempt on my life, they filed false police reports, lied to investigators, and engaged in a conspiracy to cover up their crimes. And the cherry on top? They used money from their criminal enterprises, fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, to fund their lifestyles while plotting my death. Marcus's lawyer was quiet for a long time. "What do you want?" "I want your client to understand that actions have consequences. For 32 years, my family faced no consequences for using me, manipulating me, and taking advantage of my love for them. Now they're learning what accountability feels like. But surely there's some way to. Your client tried to murder me. The time for negotiation died when I sank to the bottom of that lake." The beautiful thing about Marcus's case was watching him try to flip on everyone else to save himself. 6 months after I crawled out of that lake more dead than alive, I sat in a federal courthouse watching my family's final act. Jerome pled guilty to disability fraud and conspiracy. 5 years federal prison. Tamara cut a deal on the tax evasion charges but still got 2 years plus restitution. Marcus, the smartest of them all, got the longest sentence. 8 years for money laundering and conspiracy to commit murder. My mother's trial was last. Mortgage fraud, money laundering, and lying to federal investigators. At 72, she was looking at her final years behind bars. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Sandra Hayes, had built an ironclad case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this isn't a story about a family dispute. This is a story about a criminal enterprise that culminated in the attempted murder of the one family member who refused to participate in their crimes. She pointed to the evidence table. Financial records showing 8 years of systematic fraud. Bank statements revealing money laundering operations. And most damning of all, witness testimony proving that when their primary victim finally said no to funding their criminal lifestyle, they tried to eliminate her permanently. The defense attorney tried to paint it as a tragic misunderstanding, family dynamics gone wrong, emotions running high. But the evidence was overwhelming. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I stood slowly, feeling the weight of everything that had brought me to this moment. Your Honor, for 8 years I funded my family's lifestyle while they built nothing, contributed nothing, and demanded everything. I gave over $400,000 to people who saw me not as family, but as a resource to be exploited. I looked directly at my mother who couldn't meet my eyes. When I finally set boundaries, when I finally said I needed to invest in my own future instead of funding their failures, they decided I had to die. Not disown me, not cut me off, kill me. My voice stayed steady, professional. They succeeded in killing someone that night. The woman who believed blood was thicker than water, who thought family meant unconditional love and support. She drowned in that lake. The woman standing before you today understands that family is a choice, and they chose to be my enemies long before I chose to be theirs. The jury deliberated for 40 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Today marks exactly 1 year since my family tried to murder me. I'm sitting in my new office, a penthouse suite overlooking the city skyline, reviewing contracts for 3 new $1 million accounts. The business I almost sacrificed to keep funding their failures is now worth more than I ever imagined possible. My assistant buzzes the intercom. Ms. Williams, you have a visitor. Says she's your sister. Tamara got out on early release for good behavior. She's standing in my lobby looking like she's aged a decade, wearing a cheap dress and holding a small suitcase. Prison changed her. The arrogance is gone, replaced by something that might actually be humility. Hello, Keisha. It's Ms. Williams now. What do you want? I wanted to apologize. For everything. For the lake, for the years of taking advantage, for, her voice breaks. For watching you almost die and doing nothing to stop it. I study her face, looking for the manipulation I've learned to recognize. But I only see genuine regret and the hollow look of someone who's lost everything. Are you apologizing because you're sorry or because you need something? Both, she admits. Jaden's doing well in school. Thank you for the scholarship fund, by the way. But I have nowhere to go when I finish probation next month. I was hoping maybe. No. Keisha, please. Ms. Williams. And no, I won't be funding your fresh start. I won't be giving you a place to stay or a job or gas money or grocery money or any other kind of assistance. She nods slowly, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just thought maybe after all this time. After all this time what? You'd earned forgiveness? You think serving 18 months in minimum security erases 8 years of financial abuse followed by attempted murder? I know it doesn't. I just hoped. Hope is what I had when I was underwater screaming for help. Hope is what I had when I thought my own family would choose my life over their grudges. Hope almost got me killed. I stand and walk to the window, looking out at the city where I've built something real, something lasting, something that no one can take away from me. You made your choice that night on the dock, Tamara. Live with it. She leaves without another word and I go back to my contracts. My phone shows 17 missed calls from numbers I don't recognize. Probably Jerome calling from prison or Marcus trying to get commissary money, or my mother hoping I'll visit. I delete them all without listening. The woman who almost drowned in that lake is gone forever. The woman who survived is someone they should have protected instead of destroying. Someone they could have been proud of instead of jealous of. Someone who could have lifted the whole family up instead of watching them tear themselves down. But they chose to be enemies instead of family. And now they're exactly where they put themselves, drowning in the consequences of their own actions with no one left to save them. I'm not bitter about it anymore. I'm grateful. They set me free. Final verdict time. Hero or villain? Did Keisha do what we all wish we could do, or did she go nuclear when she should have tried diplomacy? I need to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if stories about people finally putting themselves first give you life, subscribe and ring that notification bell, because this is just the beginning.